Okay.
Do you want to wait?
Check 1, 2. So you want to gavel us in there if you would there, Brian? So commissioners extraordinaire that are here this evening. I appreciate your time for the benefit of the audience and those that may be joining us through the virtual network. We actually had an unfortunate situation. Mayor Pro Tem Birdsong had to make an emergency trip out of town due to a family matter with the passing of a relative. So we will keep him and his family in our thoughts as he is making that journey. And Commissioner Dantzler was also pulled away. So we're able to continue this meeting this evening in the sense that we are not taking any formal action. This is informational purposes only, but for the benefit of Commissioner Mercer and Commissioner Yates, as well as the department staff that are here and any residents that may come in at some point, we want to make sure we go ahead and carry forward with this noticed meeting as we've posted to the website and have communicated on leading up to today. My intent this evening is to take you through our proposed budget for fiscal year 2024. We have done individual briefings at a high level with all of the commissioners, all 4 commissioners over the past week or so. So you have a general familiarity with this. AJ is going to be providing you momentarily with hard copies of this presentation so that you can make notes and flag things that you want to come back to. But this is in anticipation of a budget of a agenda item that will appear for you Monday evening regarding our tentative millage rate, as well as the scheduling of our budget meetings for September. So commissioners, if you're okay for me to proceed, I will get underway.
Please.
Okay. So a couple of things that we built this budget around, I shared with the commission and our staff back in January, our interest in creating some strategic pillars to help guide what we're doing as an organization. We pulled together 3 different focus groups, utilizing graduates of the first class of City U, some of our strategic partners within the community, as well as the leadership within the various departments of the city. And what we came away from that was that everything we do within Winter Haven, every service we provide, every facility, every amount of funding that we provide to third parties to provide services on their side, all can fall within one of 6 or multiples of these 6 pillars. Quality of life, community safety, infrastructure, responsible government, environmental stewardship, and economic sustainability. Each of these has its own definition and some examples that apply to it. And it's not necessarily just those things that come easily to mind. For example, community safety. I think if you ask the general public, they'd probably say, well, community safety is all about police and fire and code enforcement. The reality is it does include those things, but it also includes transportation systems and maintaining safe roadways, maintaining school zones, creating sidewalks so that there's safe passage for pedestrians and bicyclists. It involves making sure that we have safe drinking water and that our infrastructure is safely operated to ensure that our community, beyond just a law enforcement and emergency response, is prepared for the challenges. So you can see everything we do really does fall within these, and we can expand on that as we go forward. But this was the basis for how we built our budget in this process. In addition to that, we are doing some community surveying right now. We're utilizing a company called Zen City. Zen City is a company that helps us monitor the public discourse and sentiment on public facing or public orchestrated social media platforms. So not your private account, but city's page, the chamber's page, Main Street, the Ledger, those types of things. We can capture sentiment. So they are engaging in a community survey, and I shared this with the commission back, I believe it was in March or April, and that is underway today. We are also embracing the performance metrics within our budget. So every department was asked to prepare metrics that are things that they can count within their department that are quantifiable that speak to those strategic pillars. These may be inputs such as number of meetings that we engaged in or how much money we invested in something. It could be how many employees we hired, how many participants we had in summer camps, those types of things. It can be outputs. It can be amount of water produced. It can be service responses that we have. It can be crime statistics, but it all ties back to the strategic pillars. The intent is that at the end of the year, or as we go forward, we have some data that is rich, that is built within our own organization, and we have community survey results that give us the public's perception. We can use those things together to create a community or an organizational scorecard and a community dashboard. So we will be able to report out through our website to the community how we're doing in those categories. So, you know, my goal is for us to have high scores in all 6 pillars. You know, I'd like to have A+ in every one of those. But if for some reason we come back and we say, you know, public perception and community safety is not real high, let's look at what the data says. Let's look at what our investments are, so that when we begin to prepare our budget for fiscal year 25 next spring, we know where we need to direct our investments. It may also indicate where we need to do a better job of communicating with the public. We are embracing a company right now. In fact, I expect to be signing an agreement with them in the coming days, if not weeks, that will help capture all that data for us and build those dashboards and make that a much easier operation for our staff as we go forward. It just kind of puts everything in the same format. And then at that last bullet, strategic planning, we'll use all of this information to engage in a strategic planning session with the commission next spring ahead of our budget season, so that we can really dialogue on those matters. I mentioned the scorecard and the dashboard for the sake of the folks that are here tonight. I do want to share that we are working with Civic Plus to develop a new website. So we will roll out a new City of Winter Haven website. We anticipate that to be sometime, hopefully late this fall, December, Katrina is telling me. So all those things, there's a new freshness to all of it happening at the same time. Budget highlights. We have built this budget around a millage of 6.59 mils. That is our current millage rate. And I will talk a little bit more about millage in just a moment. We are not recommending an increase in millage or a decrease in millage. I'm recommending that it stay the same. We have seen an increase in property values, 15.2% over the last year. I was reading a statistic earlier today that when it comes to property taxes and those increases of property values, keep in mind that Save Our Homes legislation that limits the increase in homesteaded properties to a 3% adjustment based upon, regardless of what the increase in values are. And I want to say it was somewhere north of 65% of our residential properties in Winter Haven are homesteaded properties. The ad valorem proceeds with increased by just a little over almost $3.2 million in the general fund. The ad valorem proceeds within our CRAs total $3.2 million for the downtown district and $1.1 million for the Florence Villa district. Both of those have seen a slight increase this year. Keep in mind that those dollars get reinvested back into those districts. And also we have some rebate programs, some incentive programs, particularly within the downtown CRA, whereas as you see new properties come online, there may not be a direct benefit of revenue coming into the city for that, because we do rebate that back in some of those scenarios. The Rain Dance apartments is one of those types of projects. There is $250,000 allocated to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund that we have. That is a commitment that we made 2 years ago. And so we continue to do that. We do also program out some money from that account or that fund to help with some of our homeless initiatives. The budget includes a 2.5 step for employees. That as part of our STEP program. This will be the 3rd year of the STEP program. And we are also recommending a cost of living adjustment to address retention, recruitment, and just the general economic hardships that all of our employees are facing. There is a significant weighted focus on public safety above that, and I will elaborate on that. In terms of the number of budgeted positions for fiscal year 24, we will have 604 full-time positions if the budget is approved as presented, 88 part-time for a total of 692. Comparatively, this budget that's being proposed includes 13 new full-time positions and 2 part-time positions. Those full-time positions are spread out across multiple funds to include the general fund, the proprietary accounts, the building fund, those types of areas. That being said, of the 13, 3.5 of the positions are within the general fund. So, and a lot of it is tied to growth in the community as a whole. I'll elaborate more on that as we go forward, and it will hopefully make sense. The total budget for fiscal year 24 is proposed at $257,001,165. So again, 257,001,165. It does utilize about $5.1 million of general fund balance to take care of 3 projects that I'm going to talk about. That will draw down our fund balance slightly, but only until such time that our fiscal year 23 books are closed, because we anticipate to have a fund balance at the end of this year. So that will recharge that fund balance. It also contemplates, as we move forward on a couple projects, if there is a need to borrow on any projects to do any bank loans or debt, it does account for that within the budget. And the decision on whether or not to do that will be based upon fund balance as well at the time. Looking at the millage rates around the county, you can see that Winter Haven is at number 10 in terms of millage. We dropped from 6.79 mils in fiscal year 22 to the current rate of 6.59, which is what we're proposing for next year. As I pointed out to all of you during briefings, if you look at those that are in the teal color, those are ad valorem millage rates that went down or are proposed to go down. If they are in red, they are going up, and if they are in gold, they are staying the same. Fiscal year 24, you'll find that all but one case of an agency that lowered its millage last year, none of them are lowering it this year, except for Lake Alfred. The agencies or the cities that did not lower last year are the ones that are proposing to lower this year. So you either, in a nutshell, you either kind of went with it last year or you're going with it this year. I did see earlier today in a budget report that the city of Bartow, I believe that theirs is going up 1.5 mils this year. So that would be another one that would be increasing. We have not yet heard from Lakeland or Haines City or Highland Park on what they are proposing. And of course, this is all subject to final approval by their jurisdictional boards. Our funding partners, we talked about this, I believe it was in June, and the commission actually took action on this to approve it. The community partners that we have are Polk Vision, which helps with advocacy across many fronts, Main Street Winter Haven, the Chamber of Commerce, and the Economic Development Council. You can see Main Street is funded at $20,000. That is within this portion of the budget. They are also funded within the downtown CRA at $45,000 for a total of $65,000, and that is consistent with what we've done in years prior. The Economic Development Council, that is a slight increase from last year. There was a question that had come up in general about how much of their operations is the city responsible for financially. I've spoken with Bruce Lyon, and he was actually able to tell me, give me information. Sometimes his response is I can't tell you anything. On this one, he was very forthcoming. This current year, we make up a little less than 38% of their budget. So their community benefactors and partners are that has grown significantly over the years, and they are doing some great work. John Murphy and his team and myself and our utilities folks had a very productive meeting with Bruce on a project this morning. So we're getting a lot of return on that investment. The other item I'll mention within this group, the Lakeland Area Mass Transit District, that funding of roughly $294,000. That is the same amount as this year. In speaking with Aaron Killebrew Kinlaw, that is likely to be the same number for next year and the year following. They don't anticipate any increases. They will be here on August 14th to do a presentation to the commission. We usually have them in at that time just to give us an update on what is happening with mass transit. We're also intending to line up a mid-year update from them in the spring of 24, just so you can be a little more informed on what they have going on. And as you heard at our last commission meeting, the Heart for Winter Haven homeless initiative is bearing fruit, and we're happy to see that. That's progressing. And so from that Affordable Housing Trust Fund, there is an appropriation of $220,000 for them to continue the program. We have talked about the nonprofits at length in our commission meeting. Your grant and aid advisory, our application review committee, again, I can't praise them enough for the hard work that they do. This reflects what was recommended by that committee and approved by the commission last month. And again, you can see the agencies that were funded. There is $305,000 that's going out to the nonprofits in our community to help make Winter Haven as special as it is. And if you have questions at any point through this, please stop me. In terms of revenues for the entire organization, so this is all of our departments, all of our funds. So your ad valorem, obviously that's what people always think about within government, but utility funds, the solid waste fund, impact fees, all of those combined bring in a revenue of $226,990,971. The largest chunk of that is going to be within our utility fund at about 31%, and then the general fund at about 29%. There was a question that had come up during one of the briefings, and it may have been from Mayor Dantzler, but for the benefit of all, there was a question about the field house and how it's performing in terms of revenues over expenses. Fieldhouse is covering about 31% of their operations right now through revenues that come in. That's off of tournament rentals and memberships and classes and programs. Certainly, we continue to work to build that number, but that 31% is based upon the entire building, not just the rental aspect of it. So when you factor in that a big percentage of that space that is heated and cooled and maintained falls within the Theater Winter Haven and Ridge Art, we'll have to go back and dig a little deeper and see if we can carve out, okay, if it's just within the field house portion itself, what does that look like? I would say, however, that while we don't necessarily get that direct benefit back in full coverage of expense, there is a significant indirect return on investment to the community as a whole. You have hotels that are coming out of the ground now that are the result more so of what's happening with the demand for rooms from the field house than from anything. If you were to talk with Mike Holtz and the folks that are doing the Stay Bridge right across the street here, one of the final deciding points for them was the location of the field house and the need for rooms to accomplish that. So that is a significant investment that somebody's making in response to what we did. In addition, FDOT is investing somewhere north of $7 million into our roadway system right around there. That's an improvement that may not have happened otherwise had it not been for our investment within the field house. That is certainly a bit of a disruption right now, and on behalf of all involved, I extend my sympathies and empathies, but when that is done, it is going to be significantly better than what it was. And there's also a lot of local spending that happens through the folks that are here at the field house. So we're getting that sales tax back, and we're seeing cash registers ring, and we're seeing restaurants stay full. So there's a lot of indirect value.
So I've got a question on that.
Certainly.
So 31% of the overall expense, which would include the debt service.
Yes.
And then as a percentage, do you know what that is of what Polk County sports marketing is covering?
I don't off the top of my head, Brian. I'll have to dig into that. So they are paying principal and interest on 10 million. So we'll have to, I can't do it on the fly, but we can get you that.
That closes the gap probably substantially, since that debt service is coming from, as you say, all the heads and beds, taxes and things like that. That's covering that gap of the remaining.
In the county, they certainly recognize the benefit. I mean, their willingness to step up and contribute at such a significant level on the phase 2 of that development. It speaks to, this is a winner, you know, this is driving, it's an economic engine. It may not have all the dollars coming right back into that cash register at the counter at the field house, but it's certainly helping with a lot of the other ones. And that, you know, that keeps property values up. That makes it an attractive area, keeps occupancy, all those things.
And we're around 48, 49 weeks booked.
I'm gonna look, yep, Julie and Scott are shaking their heads.
And so if when's the last time we evaluated what we charge to utilize that building?
Probably when we opened it, I would say.
It's probably about time to look at that again.
Certainly do that. In terms of expenditures within all the funds, again, this is everything, utilities included. And that I say that because that's the kind of anomaly within it. Capital comprises about 47% of our total budget. You'll see when I back out the utility side of it, how much that changes. But that just gives you an idea. Overall, we are a lot of capital that's going on at almost $138 million. Expenditures that go out to some of the other funds. This is within the so support of other funds includes general support of the library, cemetery, and airport. There's a solid waste utility dividend that leaves those proprietary funds and comes back into the general fund. There's non-operating expenses that we incur for property and liability insurance. And for the benefit of everybody, I'm going to tell you that local government is no better off than residential property owners when it comes to insurance. We are getting the same types of increases and challenges there. We also, within our expenditures, you can see at $295,665,051. That is higher than what the revenue is, because we have monies that we had acquired in the past that have been set aside through debt, through bond, through various sources, impact fees that are being used to fund capital projects. There's a lot of fund equity that we have that has been earmarked for projects that are coming due now. So that's why you'll see that discrepancy there. In the general fund, ad valorem taxes make up the bulk of what our revenue is at $25 million. Our state shared revenues are about $8.1 million. We got that number in, those numbers in just in the last day or two. And CJ Scott and Alan Weeks and the team in finance were pretty much spot on how they calculated that. So my compliments to them. The transfers that you see that make up about $9.8 million. Let me just jump ahead. You can see that that is some money that comes in from the CRAs for debt service. There is some building safety money that comes in. There's a transfer that comes in from the federal building we own downtown. We're moving about $2.2 million in from impact fees, primarily to help with a lot of police vehicles, fire vehicles, capital depletion on those. The transfer from the utility fund of $4.6 million and the transfer from the solid waste fund of $1.2 million. Talk about that utility fund transfer for a moment. In, I believe it was 2017, Commission had passed a resolution to, in response to some negative feedback we received from crediting agencies about the size of the transfer coming from the utility fund. And that resolution called for us to reduce the dividend transfer by $300,000 every year until we got to a level that was equivalent to, that was equal to or less than 12% of our audited operating revenues. I'm happy to say that this year for 2024, we will be at 12%. that will mark the third year in a row that we have been at or below the 12%. So we accomplished that reduction year over year, and we are in step with what that resolution says. I will say that resolution and that transfer is subject to preemption by the state legislature. So if the state comes back and says, you know, we're at 12%, if they come back and say you're not allowed to transfer any more than 3% from your utilities, which is not out of the question. This year, there was a bill that was filed that reduced it. I want to say it was maybe 7% was going to be the maximum. I'm looking to see if anybody, Dave, Mark, maybe recalls that. It was 7% was going to be the maximum. Last year, in the 22 session, the bill that was proposed prohibited any transfer. So I say that in the sense of if a legislation like that were to pass, that is a loss of $4.6 million into the general fund. That is well over 1 mil. So if that were to happen, the choice becomes you raise the millage, you cut the services, or you increase fees somewhere else. So we continue to advocate against doing, you know, what they're trying to do it in the state legislature, and provide some insights as to the impact that could have. Expenditures in the general fund, I mentioned when we look at all the funds combined, how much of that went to capital. In the general fund, it's not quite the same. Most of our expenses within the general fund fall within personnel. About $32 million of the general fund goes to personnel, mainly because a lot of our capital gets moved out into the construction fund, the transportation fund, some of the other areas where we can actually make those projects come out of the ground. The general fund expenditures for this year total $70 million. And again, you can just see the classification of how they're spent out. There is some support of other funds I want to make note of. It's that third bullet you see. The general fund helps offset shortfalls within the library, the airport, the cemetery. There's also a transfer into the transportation fund. A lot of that is tied back to gas tax revenues that come in. I mentioned earlier that there's a transfer from the 2000 into the 2015 construction fund. That is that fund balance piece that I mentioned, $5.1 million. That is specifically for the Rowdy Gaines pool filtration replacement and renovations. A Lake Elbert trail to cover the Delta. That project is coming for, it's been bid out and we've got the bids. We will be presenting that to the City Commission to award that bid in August. So the Lake Elbert Trail is moving forward. And then we need to do some HVAC improvements at the Florida Citrus Building. That is a massive facility, and you can see that costs associated with HVAC replacements are equally large. There is also, as I mentioned earlier, the transfer into the Winter Haven Affordable Housing, the trust fund of $250,000. Capital expenditures that are within the general fund, I mentioned replacement of vehicles, mostly within police, fire, and streets. And within streets, that's some big equipment. That's an asphalt truck, that's a dump truck, those types of things that are not cheap. And we all know that fire trucks, while they're fun to look at, they are painful to buy. You're looking at north of $1 million on a fire truck nowadays. We fund those through capital depletion year over year. And so in anticipation of having to secure fire truck replacements down the road, we've had to increase that. And then police vehicles, same situation of just having to replace those as we wear them down. There is some improvements for playgrounds and resurfacing of trails within our parks. Very straightforward, typical things that you would expect to see within the general fund. Nothing of great surprise or anomaly, in my opinion. When you look at the departments that are funded within the general fund, this is kind of interesting. The non-departmental, that's those transfers out to the other departments. When you're transferring $5 million out to the construction fund, you can see how that number builds pretty quick. But I want to talk specifically about police and fire and go back to the comments we had on the ad valorem. I'll remind you, your ad valorem revenues for next year are projected to be $25 million. Police and fire comprise about 40% of the general fund budget. Ad valorem taxes at the current millage of 6.59 are $3 million short of funding your police and fire department. We are very much dependent upon the other revenues that we have coming in there. Again, utility fund transfer in, solid waste, state shared revenues, user fees, grants, all those different things. But when it comes to the ad valorem, it does not even cover the cost of our public safety operations. I don't say that to, dispel anything, but I think it's just a reality that, when it comes to what our tax rate is in comparison to the services that we provide, it still doesn't, cover the full ticket. Self-insurance fund, we've talked about this in the past. I just like to point out again, if you look in 2021, you see this big spike there. City of Winter Haven is self-insured. That means when our employees go to the doctor for care and they pay their deductible, the balance of that is paid by the city of Winter Haven. That's how we are self-insured. And you can see in 2021, we had a nice little spike there and what it costs us to operate, and we just call that our COVID year, because that is exactly what that was. And you can see from 2020 from the prior year to 2020, we had a 4.5% drop in what our costs were. And then we had a 27, almost 28% increase in 21. That has begun to come back down, and we are excited to see that. There was some discussion, an inquiry that was made about, can we have employees, once they hit a certain age, go on to the Medicare program to reduce some of our costs here? And the simple answer to that is no, we cannot do that. As an employer with over 20 employees, we cannot have, all of our employees have to be on the same benefit plan. We can't have, force some into one and keep others on another. What happens is employees that are over age 65 that are working for us, our city insurance is the primary whenever they have a situation, and their Medicare is secondary. When they switch over to a retiree status, it does just the opposite. Medicare becomes the primary and the city becomes the secondary. Trying to do something that would push our employees to Medicare once they hit age 65, actually within our system would be likely considered some age discrimination and just something we just can't do. So I just wanted to follow back up on that, and I can answer more questions if need be.
Can you go back?
Yep.
As our workforce continues to grow, approaching almost 700 employees, is that obviously those costs are going to rise? Is there an estimate of, is that factored in going forward since we're continuing to grow our workforce?
Well, a couple of things there, Commissioner. First of all, the rate at which we grow is pretty small, so we can look at it on year over year and fund it as need be. We are trying to implement some programs that really focus on employee health and wellness. That will drive that number down, even though it's come down, 0.5% plus since last year. We need to get that even further down because we're paying that tab. Having a healthier workforce is the key within that. Just getting employees to take advantage of annual wellness checks, catch things early enough on before they become major life-altering and expensive changes. So one of the things that I have proposed within this budget is a new position that is a risk and benefits manager that will focus specifically on what our insurance coverages are, what we do through Blue Cross Blue Shield or Florida Blue and the different providers that help us manage our plan, what we do with our property insurance to find ways to further reduce that and implement programs to bring it down. We will continue to evaluate it year over year and make adjustments. We have another pandemic type situation. I don't know if we can ever be fully prepared for that, but certainly as we grow, we need to anticipate what those costs are and be funding this. And of course, as you have more employees come on, they're also contributing into the program. The pension plans, this is not as good of pictures maybe we've had in the past. It's not a bad picture, but I will say that our plan funded ratios remain above 80% in all three pension plans. This is the general employee pension that you're looking at here. If you look in the lower right corner, you'll see the investment return versus the assumption. So all the pensions have an assumption rate that is factored into how they perform. This one had an assumption rate of 6.5%. And for fiscal year 22, you can see that it fell significantly below that at 2.7. The understanding I have is that's because the bond market was horrible during fiscal year 22. What I have been presented to earlier today from Deputy City Manager, who is a member of the pension board, is that their pension performance through the first quarter of fiscal year 23 is around 5.25%. So it is more in line with that assumption rate. And we expect that the second quarter will also be higher. So, you know, I think that that's an economic situation, and it's got a blip in it, and it's not something that I'm overly concerned with at this point. Police and fire, same thing. Firefighters, they're at about 85.8% plan funded ratio, and you can their assumption rate at 7.6, and their investments performed at 2.82. And the police is performing at 88% of plan funded ratio. Again, 7.45% is the assumption and 2.6 is the actual. So I think we're going to see all those as soon as we get through fiscal year 23 and look at this year's numbers. We're going to see that much better. In terms of wages, we have to meet the state's minimum wage for per the statute that was passed in 2022 or 2020. I apologize. If you look at September 30th of 2024, so the third row from the bottom, that is the number that we have to hit in the coming fiscal year. They use the end of the fiscal year. We use the first of the fiscal year. If the budget is approved as presented, the minimum wage required is $13 per hour. Our lowest rate will be at $14.55 per hour. So we are ahead of that. I would never want to be at that same rate as what the minimum wage is, because the market around us and who we're competing for is always going to be significantly higher than that. And I think that we have an appropriate pay rate and classification pay schedule that is competitive against what is out in the marketplace. Our rates this year, our base rates for our positions will adjust by 1% COLA. We do half of the COLA that the incumbents get. We apply half of that to the base rate, so that goes up by 1%. And the STEP program included a 2.25% adjustment to the base as well. I mentioned STEP program. So look at fiscal year 2024. Our employees, our incumbents, are scheduled to receive a 2.5% pay adjustment on their anniversary. That is so that what that ultimately does, it spreads that cost down over the course of a year, so it's not an all at once October 1 hit. And then you can see in the far right column the base rates for all of our positions, how they adjust, and that again is to stay in step with the cost of living and the minimum wage, and create some spread within the salary schedule. In terms of cost of living, the graph that you see, we do cost of living, CPI, research every month. So we just got June's last week. The bottom section of that would be June over June from 2020 to 21. The blue section is 21-22. And the orange section is how much the CPI has adjusted from last June to this June. I'm recommending a 2% cost of living adjustment for all of our employees, unless they are classified or they are adjusted in some of the reclasses and other adjustments I'm going to present. But 2% this year, when you think about last year, we did a cost of living adjustment. In the best case, we did an 8% for our frontline employees. We did a 5% for our mid-level employees, and anybody that was in a management position or higher received a 2% adjustment last year. The adjustment this year, if you combine that with what was given last year, our frontline employees will have received a 10% cost of living adjustment over 2 years. Our mid-level folks would receive a 7% over 2 years, and our managers a 4%. June over the past 2 years is $12.03 or 12.3%, sorry, 12.03%. So even in the best case, we're running about 2% below what the actual CPI is. Now, granted, we have STEP within there that will help offset that to some extent. But I feel that this is something that we can do that remains competitive, and it addresses what some of the CPI challenges and inflation issues that our employees are facing. Similar to last year, we have a couple areas of critical concern. In this case, they are both within public safety. In the police department, we currently have a rate of pay for our entry-level police officers once they have completed their field training work at $22.94 an hour. That's about $47,715 a year. We are facing about a 20% vacancy rate within law enforcement, and recruitment continues to be a challenge, not just for us, but for every agency that is out there. What we are recommending to make us more competitive in recruiting folks and in retaining new employees is to do an 8% adjustment to the starting rate of pay for our police officer position. That would take it from the $47,715 per year to $51,542 a year. That is the new employee coming in, base rate, finish their FTO, and they are ready to roll on the street. When you do that, you also run into the issue of compression, because you have folks that have been within the system for a year or more. And so what we've recommended, rather than say just give an 8% to everybody, we have taken the value of that 8%, which is $1.84 increase per hour, and adding that to the existing rates of pay for our police officers, inspectors, detectives, sergeants, and lieutenants. That would adjust their rate of pay by $3,827. Again, giving us a base rate, that's the most important part of it, of $51,542. From our research conducted through the Human Resources Department, that puts us at a competitive level with our neighboring jurisdictions with whom we're all fighting for the same cadets. Separate from those, the chiefs, the captains, the trainees, cadets, there would be a 2% COLA applied to any of those in that position as of October 1st this year. Fire department, similar situation. Our firefighters, they work a different hourly number per year, but at $15.10 starting pay on our firefighters, that puts them at $39,260 a year. We are at about a 17% vacancy rate, although we swore in 3 new firefighters this morning. I thank you both for being there. We still have a number of positions that we need to recruit for. Same thing, we're recommending an 8% adjustment to the starting pay on fire. That would take them from that rate of $39,260 per year to $42,406 a year. That is for a firefighter with their EMT certification, a firefighter 1. We would, in addition to that, those firefighters, once they become paramedics, if they choose to get that certification, our incentive for paramedics is $9,000 a year. So when you add that to it, it puts it at $51,406 a year. Similar scenario, firefighter 1s, 2s, 3s, lieutenants, the inspectors and the investigators under the direction of the fire marshal, those would also increase by the same dollar equivalency, which in this case is $1.21. That is an annual increase of $3,146 for each of those positions. We would run into some compression within our battalion chiefs. So to avoid that, I've recommended and factored in a 5% adjustment for the 3 battalion chiefs who were just sworn in this past spring. And that would, again, keep us on a competitive level there. The chief, the operations chief, and the fire marshal would be at a 2% adjustment. It's my belief, and I'm still, we're still in discussions with the unions on this. This is what I built this budget around. This is what I balanced it on. This is what I feel is fair and within the market. And what I'm prepared to present to the commission tonight and again on Monday. New positions that we have added. I mentioned there are 13 new full-time positions and 2 new part-time positions. Within the general fund, the 3.5 positions include most predominantly a deputy chief of police. I'm sad to say that our police chief will retire in 2024 after many great years of service to us that we are most appreciative for, but his drop period will end. So we are bringing in a deputy chief of police. It is my intent that that would be someone that we are anticipating to assume the role of chief of police. And when we look to interview and make a selection there, that is the mindset that I have, is that who is the person that is going to be able to take over this department upon Chief Brannan's retirement. That position is funded for 1 year and 1 year only. So it is somewhat of a coach in waiting, as we say in the college football world. Those don't always work out. I'll be the first to admit that, but more times than not, they do. And that is what we're going to be doing within the police department. In the communications world, there's a communications assistant. This is within Katrina Hill's department. You are all aware of how much we are doing nowadays with new website, new promotional pieces, our legislative efforts at the state and federal level. Just a ton of things, City University, a ton of things going on there. So I've added a position in that area, an engineering intern that is shared between streets in our engineering department, a crew leader for our activity fields to help with our Diamondplex and Sertoma operations. I mentioned the benefits and risk management manager and HR. It is my opinion that that position will likely pay for itself probably to the tune of 75–80% in year one, and hopefully 100% as we move forward, just by being able to identify places that we can make savings on what we're paying for today. There's also an organizational development intern within HR. Bless you. In the airport, a customer services representative, that is a staff level position to help us manage the day-to-day work within the administrative offices. Flood plain manager within building permit, business tax receipt, field inspector within building permit, and also at the airport, 1 additional technician. Blue line coming on and so much activity with Sun and Fun. We need enough staff to be able to fully cover all the shifts out there. In utilities, there are 4 positions that are recommended. The most important of these is that utility construction inspector. Mark and Todd and the gang can tell you we are putting more pipe in the ground, or well, developers are putting more pipe in the ground than you can shake a stick at. And we have to inspect all that. As you see every one of these subdivisions going up, we're out there right behind them, checking to make sure it's right. And we have to have the bodies to be able to do that. Water conservation specialist. I don't need to speak to you about One Water and how important conservation is, but we've got to continue our efforts to reduce the amount of water that people are using. Our pre-treatment and fog coordinator, that is part of our wastewater treatment plant operations. And then over in customer service, just a billing assistance clerk. Again, you have probably 2,000 to 3,000 new accounts that are coming on in terms of irrigation accounts, residential accounts, commercial accounts. That's additional workload that we have to be able to account for. The final position that's being added is a litter control coordinator within solid waste. Said it during our briefings, this is like my pet peeve within Winter Haven. I hate seeing litter on our streets and in our parks and in our rights of way. It ends up in our lakes, and it's not the image that we want. And I think in speaking with the now deputy city manager, former public works director, a little effort in that area can go a long way. Coordinating with Keep Winter Haven Clean and Beautiful, different nonprofits, various schools and neighborhood associations to really champion litter control efforts, to coordinate when we have employees that are on light duty and can't get up and down on a garbage truck, we can use them in some other functions, and this is part of how we'll get that done.
Gee, Michael, I have a question on the benefits and risk management manager. Will they be in charge of workforce safety, or do we have someone in charge of workforce safety, or?
I would anticipate that, and I don't know that we've discussed that at full, Commissioner Mercer, but we do have through the HR team, a internal safety committee that is comprised of employees, probably not much different from when you worked here. Sean Dykes helps coordinate that. I think members of her team, and I'm looking for Sean in the room. She's over here. Okay. I'm not sure who else from your team is involved in that, but they meet monthly. They review all of our accident reports. I think that certainly when we're talking about property insurance and how claims are being handled, that this person would likely be involved with that as well. I don't think that's a one-stop shop for any single person. In the reclassifications, start right at the top and pop the bubble on this one. One of the things that I've recommended in the budget is that we change the title of our Director of Public Safety to an Assistant City Manager for Public Safety. I've looked at this over the past year. Mr. Herr, when he was city manager, and I had talked about this, and we're kind of working through that of what's the best angle here. My professional opinion is that when you look within public administration and municipal government, when you have an individual that is overseeing multiple departments that, as I mentioned, are comprising over 40% of your city budget, that is not a department director. In my opinion, that the role that Charlie is performing aligns with what is expected of an assistant city manager. This is a title change only. I think it positions us well for what comes down the future, if and when Charlie would ever retire. Not that we're going to allow him to do that, but if he should twist my arm or something, or give me a winning lottery ticket to go with him, I think that it's definitely where we need to be as an organization. We're talking about a 700-member workforce and a 55,000 population. This is what needs to happen. It still maintains a public safety model. It still maintains the direct coordination between emergency management, safe neighborhoods, police operations, fire operations, the inspectors, and it aligns it well within how. The other positions that are noted within here, communications intern, that is an existing position, and we are recommending that go from an intern to a full-time position. The accounting manager changed to a budget management officer, again, aligning with the metrics and performance measurements that we have plugged in. Our administrative services manager will be retiring this year, and we are recommending that be changed to a LAP coordinator. That is a function that works directly with FDOT on all of our grant dollars. There are some minor adjustments in pay grade for our irrigation specialist and a spray technician in parks. Our seasonal staff within our summer programs, we are adding one additional week to each of their allowances for additional training and prep time going into our summer camp programs. And then adjustments within our water department for the water program administrator and the utility financial specialist. And that is simply a result of just the amount of work that we are pushing out there. Again, you have a utilities budget that is a value of north of $70 million. When you think about, that is significantly larger than most of the cities in Polk County.
Ask you a question on the summer seasonal staff.
Sir.
Year over year, we're at capacity in our summer camps. So this looks like we're just adding a week for an existing individual, not adding boots to the ground. So my question.
I can sense the question, and I'm going to look down the corner of my eye at Julie over here. We filled up camp in 45 minutes this year, something like that. One, because it's the cheapest thing you can find. And two, it's a fantastic program. It's convenient, it's well run. They are looking to see how they can expand that. We can't expand within the facilities we have because your ratios that you need to have and the space that you're using, you can't just pack them in like sardines. So she's already had conversation with Jewett Middle Academy. As we get into the construction of Winter Haven Recreation and Cultural Center, we're gonna have to move programs next year. So we've already begun those conversations about that particular program, but they are exploring opportunities to perhaps have additional camps and additional spaces. And if we can bring that to fruition, we've still got a week and a half in this summer's camp. So we can evaluate what we come out of this year with. If there's an opportunity to expand the number of sites we have and the number of students that we can put into that program, we'll build the pro forma and we'll bring that back as a budget amendment if need be. It may be something that through the fees and scheduling we can make work, but we are trying to expand the number of students that we can bring in.
So if we have that extra building, we've got room to go ahead and say, hey, we need to bring on 3 extra individuals.
If we have the extra, having Jewett Middle offsets the loss of Winter Haven Rec while it's under construction. 2 years ago, we utilized Denison.
Plus, that was going to be my suggestion. Denison's got the brand new gymnasium now, so.
That may be the reason they say no, because it's brand new, you want to keep that new gym smell. But they're exploring that with Steve Warner. He's our local liaison for the school district. And we've had some great conversations and there's an opportunity to expand this program. I'm certain you'll see that come back.
And is Denison Stadium potentially a possibility since we're partnering in that rehabilitation of the fields there with artificial turf?
I think that if we were utilizing Denison Middle School for an athletic or for a summer camp, having access to the stadium for those same children would be certainly something that would make sense. And I would be shocked if that was for some reason said, no, you can't do that, given what we've committed. Certainly if there's chemical spraying or, a situation that makes it hazardous, but you couldn't just use Denison Stadium on its own because you don't have the facilities necessary for indoor space without having Denison Middle School. Okay. The other areas of reclassifications in the airport, we've recommended that we adjust the ops techs from a pay grade 18 to a 19. That's the tech 1s, and the tech 2s from a 20 to a 21. These are positions, they're putting fuel in planes and they're taxiing. I was out there the other day and looking at Blue Line Aviation thinking that's $14 million worth of aircraft sitting on our apron. And these are the folks that are helping those pilots and plane owners out and putting fuel in them and giving essential feedback to them that keeps them alive and safe in our airport. We have to do some adjustments to our librarians. That is market adjustments at the librarians too, as well as city librarian. We have a phenomenal library operation. We need to be competitive in what our pay is in that arena. Building permits, adjustments with business tax specialist and the building division assistant, as well as the customer service representative. I need not tell you how busy we are in building. The permits are not slowing down. They are just turning in a different fashion. Instead of single family, it's multifamily. It's more commercial. We've got tons of medical stuff that's coming in. These people are, the workload has significantly increased and the rate of pay needs to be commensurate with that. In the general fund overall, you can see the revenues, 65.8 million over 59.3 million from last year. So an increase of about 6.5 million. Expenditures going out, again, a higher number because we are using some fund balance within that. We're sending that out. The different units of the general fund, I can get into detail on this if you like. You'll have a tentative budget book if it's not already at your dais seat. It will be that you can go through every one of these budgets, but you can see the city commission roughly the same. City clerk's budget increases next year because we have an election. So anytime on the years that we have elections, we have additional costs associated with that. The city attorney, I've accounted for that with a modest increase just based upon what I know we're dealing with in some of our development agreements and where we'll need some out of the ordinary legal assistance. In the city manager's office, about a $53,000 increase. Again, nothing it's really out of the ordinary, keeping in mind that we are adding in the full-time communications assistant and changing the one intern. Finance, modest increase, $17,000. Planning actually goes down a hair next year. Eric, I think you and code compliance get the award for actually reducing your budget, so the police department, a significant increase. Again, what I'm recommending in rate of pay adjustments for our police officers equates to about a $1.1 million increase in personnel alone. Fire department, again, a smaller department, but an increase of almost $1 million in their personnel associated with those rates of pay adjustments. Fire department also has a pretty healthy jump in operating expenses. You'll have a new fire station, as well as some of the capital outlay. So their budget is going up by $1.5 million.
The title change on the assistant city manager for public safety, does that stay under?
It does. It stays within the housed within the budgets of police and fire because it's specific to that. And if that's kind of my general philosophy, if for some reason we down the road didn't have a police and fire department, not that I ever see that happening, the need for that position goes with that. So try and keep it aligned where it is. Parks and Recreation, again, personnel is the biggest area of their increase of about $219,000. That's those additional summer staff and the adjustments. They've got a pretty large department, so when you do the COLAs, as well as some of the reclasses. And then in streets, theirs is mostly within their operating and their capital. Again, they have some equipment they need to buy that is not cheap. General fund balance. I mentioned that we're going to draw down a little bit of our fund balance to go ahead and earmark dollars, appropriate them for three main projects: the HVAC at the Florida Citrus Building, Rowdy Gaines Olympic Pool renovations, and the filtration, and Lake Elbert Trail. Once we close the fiscal year 23 books, which will be realistically December, that fund balance will transfer right back into this. We will evaluate that at that time, and if it's over 30%, bring back to you some options for some one-time projects that you may want to appropriate that to. I don't want to go out and commit everything until we see what that fund balance is, but I did want to get those three particular projects on the books given their timing. This 30% target, remember the threshold, the minimum threshold is 17%, but we did set that 30% target. That was a key ingredient in the city's credit rating increasing this year, improving from AA- to AA. So we're grateful that the commission approved that. Significant items within the general fund. The fire station 1, that building opened in May of 2010. So it is now 13 years old, and it's time to do some painting and some cabinetry, and we need to do some bunk room and kitchen furnishings within all of our fire stations, but you can see the investment there. Parks and Grounds, we're making some resurfacing efforts on some of our more used trails, playground improvements at Lake Hartridge, some of the money for the aquatics filtration room project, Winter Haven Senior Center, painting the inside of that, heavily used facility. The tennis courts, it's time to resurface some pickleball. So that facility has only been open since 2018, and it's getting its use. So they've got to work on court 7 and then the pickleball. New windows over at the women's club for all of our youth at Sertoma baseball, bleacher covers. We did a lot of improvements at that site last year. This is the last piece on the baseball side. We've programmed some money in outer years for our football improvements. In the planning world, this is Eric's shop. So transportation element, updating that for the comp plan. looking at a First Street North study. This is realistically from Central Avenue all the way up to MLK, but addressing an overlay district that is in play today that could be somewhat restrictive to future development in that area. And we want to do everything we can to spur economic investment along First Street, make that as viable and available to people as we can. And then the strategic annexation plan. This is really looking at where do we have annexation agreements in place that are part of water connections that have not been acted upon, and being able to evaluate those, understand what is the financial impact, what is the new cost to those individuals to annex, what is the savings based upon changes that they would see from the county side, and identifying a pathway to get some of that infill done. On the street side, lots of roadway projects. There's some more electric charging stations that align with our EV master plan and some of the new capital that's coming online. The Lake Ship roadway design, Commissioner Yates, you'll recall this is the project we took to Tallahassee or to Washington, DC. We got some good news this week that we are in the bill. We are continuing to work that bill and advocate to get it funded at the level that we requested. It's a little below that right now, but that is not the final number. And we had a great discussion with our lobbyist team earlier this week. This is the design portion of that, so that if we get that funding, we're in a position to hopefully move forward. I think that's probably the biggest pieces of what's within the general fund for streets. I think you're generally familiar with what these projects look like and what their benefits are, but I'll be happy to answer questions on any of them either tonight or as we go forward.
Not specifically to the budget, but perhaps at another time. Now that we've kind of seen the spraying aspect of these roads, I'd like to hear a report, on there's 3 options in conditioning and keeping our roads. Now that we've kind of seen that, aesthetically, it's not super pleasing, but I'd love to hear a report on those aspects.
Certainly. The airport, so our total expenses at the airport for the year ahead, a little over 10 million. They have a lot of capital, as you know, and their capital is not cheap. Their South Apron rehab program is a little over $4 million. That bid just opened on July 7th. And we are pursuing additional grant funding to cover the balance of that project. But the airport, I see great things coming out of that. We're getting ready to launch the recruitment advertising piece. They're just putting the final edits on for our airport manager. And MJ is actually going to go down to an airport conference Tuesday of next week and help spread the word on that and see what insights we can get from that group. So Blue Line Aviation, that is continuing to move forward. Just a lot of good things happening out there. Alex would be proud. I mentioned that South Apron rehab project. Hubbard Construction was the low bid on that, and that has been posted, and I expect that to come to the commission in the not too distant future. The digital tower project you're very familiar with. We've had a number of presentations on that project. In the Commerce Park, this is really the infrastructure, the road and parking and utilities on the west side of the terminal that will support where Blue Line Aviation is going in and where potentially other lease opportunities could come into play for hangar construction. At the end of the day, there's $6.1 million worth of capital investment here. The city's portion of that is $12.86 on the dollar. So we're putting in a healthy chunk of money in from the general fund into the airport fund this year to cover our portion of these projects. But again, at the end of the day, when you think it's less than 13 cents on the dollar, 12 cents and 12.86 cents. What I should have said, I think it's at $12. 12.86 cents on the dollar is a pretty great return on investment. Yeah, library operations continue to allow us. They had about just shy of 84,000 borrower cards as of now. and almost 376,000 visitors through the library in 2022. Popular place. They have learned to pivot and adapt as the technology world has come into their lives. When we built that library 20 years ago, it will be 20 years old next summer, and we put in all these bookcases and shelves and resources for encyclopedias, and it seemed like almost overnight that was all gone because the use of technology changed so rapidly. But they are doing a fantastic job. Cemetery fund continues to be, we're functioning well within the cemetery. We have 5 cemeteries, as you know. We maintain 6 altogether. 1 is privately owned and managed. We have about 647 platted spaces remaining for use. We are in the process of expanding Rolling Hills Cemetery right now. They're doing some road work out there, and that will increase that number significantly. Within the airport, I mentioned their capital projects. They're also doing an emergency plan this coming year. And then in the library, 20-year-old building, it's time to paint the inside of it. So it'll be got to have a really long reach roller for that building. So we're excited to see that happen. They've been replacing carpet in different areas over the years, but now it's time to do that multi-purpose room in the back workrooms. Construction funds, this is where the big money seems to rest when it comes to capital. About the Winter Haven Recreation and Cultural Center improvements, just shy of $20 million that we're going to be investing out there. That project, we had a great public meeting 2 or 3 weeks ago. Just yesterday, the historical group that meets on that project to capture the community's rich history was here in City Hall. That is going to be an exciting project. I expect that design documents, I'm going to look to Andy Palmer and say probably late this year, we should have our design documents and be moving ground in some form or fashion after the first of the year, probably late January, early February. The Lake Maud Park Phase 2, that is the baseball fields and the additional football field, that has been designed and is ready to get just about ready to start construction, probably early this fall. And that is funded using some impact fee dollars. Chain of Lakes Park Phase 2, that should actually be Phase 2A because it is predominantly the baseball portion of it. We have plugged in funds for that program. This could potentially include some debt service, depending how the county wants to structure their contribution to the project. But that is included. Lake Elbert Trail, again, August, that will be coming to the commission for approval of the award. The construction and purchase of a building facility, that is for our building division. And we are looking to move them out of the space that they are in today and renovate the old Fire Station 1 to make that a more functional one-stop shop for our building facility, building operations. And then also looking at potentially locating a satellite office in Southeast Winter Haven in an existing property rather than build something. We have 1,200 multifamily units under construction out in that neck of the woods. We have a 200+ bed hospital that's going to be under construction in the very near future. If we can create some less traffic on our roadways by having some inspectors out there and the people that they're meeting with, I think that saves everybody a few headaches. Roddy Gaines Pool, this is renovations to their filtration. That system is about 20 years old now and needs to be modernized and upsized. The Normail HVAC we've already talked about. Lake Conine Recreation, we have 1.4 million set aside for the recreation improvements on that site. This is the project that I will, based upon what our fund balance is, once we close the 23 books, that is the priority for allocating above the 30%. I don't need it October 1 for that project because we're still doing surcharging out there. So we've got the window in which to fund that. But that is the one that is outstanding. Fire stations 4 and 5. Fire station 5 will be next year. Fire station 4, Charlie Bird and I were just looking at 70% design plans. I think MJ was with us yesterday. That is going to be an amazing little facility right there at the corner of PCC Access Road in Fairfax, next to the Fairfax Water Plant and Diamondplex. Really excited to see that go, and I expect we'll have a GMP for you probably in the next 60 days. In the transportation fund, the biggest item here is the Pollard Road CSX extension. $7.9 million is what we anticipate our cost to be within that. I've included within the general fund debt service specific to that project. We have about 9.6 million that will come in from the state. This would be our, the balance that has to be covered. And we have worked to bring that number down significantly. I'll be able to give you some more details on that in the coming weeks, I hope. But that is included. The Avenue K project, about halfway down that list, that is the Avenue K Complete Street project. MJ, have we had there's a construction meeting tomorrow, pre-construction meeting tomorrow. Local vendor, Tucker Paving, will be doing that project, and that is from Lake Silver Drive all the way up to the college, 7th Street, Lake Martha Drive area.
So the start date on that, we think might be,
So we'll know more tomorrow. Tomorrow's our pre-construction meeting, depending on arrival of materials, which Tucker, we issued an NDP for materials just a couple weeks ago. So as long as those materials are starting to come in, they'll be ready. They're ready to go. I would say within the next couple weeks.
The TIP is included at $2 million. And I'd like your idea, Commissioner Yates, of bringing back an update on how the different tools in the toolbox are working for us. And then a unique project probably that hasn't been discussed a whole lot beneath TIP. There is the design work for 3 projects. Avenue C Southeast, this is the area down by Grace Lutheran that would go from 1st Street all the way down to 6th Street. Some design work for a complete street improvement through there. 3rd Street Northwest, that is out our front door from Avenue D back to Lake Silver. One of the largest, widest pieces of asphalt in downtown. We're hoping to be able to design that and really make that a much more attractive gateway into this northern part of downtown where so much recreation is, create some more parking. And then 6th Street Southwest, that is the section of 6th Street that exists between Venue 650 and our utilities operations there, that leg within that. In the CRAs, the downtown CRA just met this past Monday. And their projects are listed. Let me get to it right here. So Sidewalk Cafe, Joyce Davis Construction, that is getting underway now. Mobilization has begun there. And they've included some funding for expansion of sidewalk cafes if there's a desire to do so. Design or construction work, preliminary construction work for improvements at Magnolia Avenue and 3rd Street. That's next to Haven Coffee. And then also at Avenue B and 2nd Street, that is 1 block to the east. The FDOT pond improvements, that is at the right there off the US 17, that massive pond. We're doing some design work there in hopes that that will lead to some FDOT funding participation. Wayfinding signage, that is part of what came out of the Walker study that we did last year to direct people to parking facilities. Tico substation improvements, that is the substation at 2nd Street to improve the aesthetics of that. That is a 3-way arrangement that we are doing with Tico and 610, who is on the west side of that with their Breeze project. And then gateway signage installation downtown. That is the actual installation of items that have already been fabricated through Main Street. In the Florence Villa CRA, they met Monday of this week, unless it was. They are contributing some funds to pedestrian calming, traffic calming on around the Lake Maud Park project. They are doing some property acquisition to try and be able to assemble properties predominantly along 1st Street and some of the major corridors to make them more viable for economic investment. And then also working for some residential infill and new construction. They also have funds that have been set aside for facade grants and the traditional programs that we've done in the past. Willowbrook, their biggest thing going forward is their capital. So we still have the Duke Energy capital money set aside. The design build process for that, 3 submittals have been received. That RFQ has closed, and that will be going to the Professional Services Committee for evaluation and review, and then coming to the commission for award of a contract. And then we can begin working towards these and programming them according to the season of the operations. Golf course overall is operating very well, knock on wood. You can see their revenues at 1.1 million and their operating is at 1.02 million. So their revenues are covering their operations. The capital is coming off of what is there from Duke. So, you know, they are, for the first time in the 22 years that I've been with the city, I'm going to say that they are breaking even and perhaps even going to turn a profit this year. Solid waste, no major changes here. They do have a 2.5% automatic increase in rates. That happens year over year. They have programmed growth within their system based upon 4% growth within the overall population properties that we serve. They have some capital I'll elaborate on in a minute, but nothing major there. Their fund balance is a little lower than I'd like to see, and that will come back up. We've been busy buying trucks as we continue to grow, so that's come down over the years. But my hope is that we'll see that go back up into the $2 million range in the not too distant future. Stormwater, their big project coming forward is going to be South Lake Howard Nature Park, the development of the WSI property, which we acquired in 2020. We have gotten money from the Heartland Headwaters Act for development on that property, as well as from the Florida Recreation Development Assistance Program. In between Dustin Everett and the folks in Natural Resources, and Andy Palmer and the folks in Parks and Grounds and Parks and Recreation, they've got some pretty awesome plans for out there that we're excited to see that moving forward in the year ahead. Again, that's the stormwater project of South Lake Howard Nature Park. In solid waste, the vehicles, you can see $500,000 for vehicles. Fire trucks are real pretty and cost $1 million. Garbage trucks are not as pretty, so they cost, you know, about $385,000 to $400,000. You know, it's this is one that we actually ordered almost a year ago or earlier this year. I guess it was probably December, and we have yet to receive it, so that money will carry forward to be paid out once we get it. Stormwater has about $1 million plus that is going into the Lake Elbert Trail. When we look at the Lake Elbert Trail project, there's the trail itself that we'll be bringing to you. There is the utility side, because we will be improving water and sewer lines within that roadway system, serving those residents. There is fiber that will go in there, and there's a lot of stormwater improvements for that lake. That is an impaired water body. It's not, you know, to the absolute extremes, but it's not having the best trends that we would like to see. So doing a lot of stormwater as part of that project will make a significant difference for the lake on the long term. In 2018, we implemented a 1 mil increase in our ad valorem, and we said that we would set that aside every year for capital projects. And these are the capital projects that are recommended for appropriation in fiscal year 24. The $2 million for the transportation improvement program, $300,000 for some deck and gutter improvements at Rowdy Gaines Pool. That will be combined with the filtration repairs that we're doing, and a $1 million appropriation into the Chain of Lakes Park Phase 2. You can see we programmed funds out for 25 through 28, and you can see that there's the value, the estimated revenue is increasing based upon a 5% annual growth. Those are placeholders at this point. That's where we think we need to spend those dollars, but that is certainly subject to change at the commission's discretion and direction, as well as based upon what operational needs may be with other facilities. In conclusion, we are at the end. I didn't think you probably thought, is he ever going to get there? So $257,001,165 is the proposed budget for fiscal year 23-24. It is inclusive of 13 new full-time positions and 2 additional part-time positions. It is inclusive of a 2% COLA for our employees, along with adjustments to police and fire personnel, in addition to our STEP program. It includes almost $19.7 million in the transportation fund for transportation-based capital improvements and investments, and of over $58.3 million for construction projects. I will say that we didn't talk a whole lot about utilities this evening, and that is because utilities is such a massive budget. We don't want to water down the rest of this by talking about water. So we are intending to bring that back to you at your first workshop in August as part of that workshop meeting. I know the other two city commissioners are not with us this evening, but we have sent out, I think, a notice this morning, Amanda Joe from my office, requesting that you consider, and we can discuss this Monday night, moving that meeting. It is presently scheduled for Wednesday, August 9th, to perhaps move that to Tuesday, August 8th. At the end of that week, yourselves, along with myself, will be traveling to the Florida League of Cities Conference. It is my understanding the mayor and mayor pro tem will need to be there on Wednesday for the League of Mayors portion. So we will request Monday evening that we move that meeting to August 8th at 5 o'clock, and then follow it right into the agenda review for the following week. The trim notice, we can talk about that when we get into our agenda review next, but that is all set based upon, again, a millage rate of 6.59 mils, and it designates our first public meeting and reading of the ordinances for the ad valorem millage rate and tentative budget to be Tuesday, September 12th at 6 p.m. We have moved all your meetings that evening to Tuesday from Monday because we were in conflict with I believe the Board of County Commissioners had theirs on Monday. So with that, thank you for your attention and allowing me to present the budget. I do want to give a couple very public acknowledgements. First and foremost, CJ Scott, your Chief Financial Officer, and Alan Weeks, our budget manager. I've never seen two people put as much time into a budget as what I saw them do. I can tell you that to drive by here on a Friday night and see their cars in the parking lot and lights on in an office still working on this, spending weekends here, 4th of July, while we were all enjoying our time with our families, they were here cranking out a budget for us. So I want to publicly recognize them. When you look at the budget book and you see the amount of detail that is in there, it is extremely well organized and articulated, and the thought process that went into managing a budget of $257 million is no easy task. So Alan and CJ, thank you so much for what you've done. And then also Katrina Hill has been behind the scenes making all of the presentation information flow and really helping craft the message on this budget. I think that what she has lined up on how we communicate this out to the public as we go forward, not just in the budget presentations, but in the ongoing transparency and accessibility to the budget and the financials that will happen through our website and our communication pieces. She has been just an absolute joy to work with and has done such an incredible job. So I just want to share that, and I'm happy to stand for any questions you may have.
I'll just say, I echo your comments and appreciate staff's hard work on all of this. You know, the city of Winter Haven has experienced tremendous growth, growth that I don't think anybody in this room or anybody around could have planned on 4 years ago. So I think rough math is about a 19% increase into the budget. And, you know, I think all things considered, we are spending money efficiently and not wasteful spending. We're doing the right things in the right areas, that impact or that have been impacted by the growth. And I do think that there's a lot of multifamily, as you mentioned, coming online. There's a lot more properties coming online. But because you don't see that realization for a couple of years, I think that puts us into a position, next cycle or the following to really take a look at, okay, where do things balance out? I don't think you can go and knee-jerk reaction year over year over year, every year to say, oh, let's lower the millage rate this year. Let's spend more money this year. You can't do that. Just because there's more money in the checkbook doesn't mean you should spend it. And I think we're being very fiscally responsible with this budget, and I can appreciate all of staff's time and efforts in putting this together.
Thank you, Commissioner Yates, and Commissioner Mercer for comments. I will say that it's a conservative budget. It may not seem like that when you talk about a budget of that size, but it's utilizing one-time money for one-time purchases. It is investing money into capital projects at today's cost of construction versus holding off and paying significantly more in a year or 2 years or 3 years. It is a budget that allows for us to pivot and respond should we see an economic shift, whether that's in the overall economy, whether that's in response to a natural disaster such as a hurricane, or in response to preemptive laws at state level that cause us to have to do things differently. I think that at the end of the day, you guys are in very well positioned. The organization is very well positioned with reserves and the allocations that are made to be able to respond and not be banking on it's not going to rain. I think that we've got the umbrella ready, and we're ready to weather the storms, and I think that we will be very effective in doing so.
I wanted to say thank you for all of your efforts in doing that. Also, we had heard some of this before, so thank you, City Manager, for your involvement in all of this too. I want to say that, we've taken care of a lot of things in this budget. And while making those decisions, you and your staff and us, we have the eye on the vision of the future. We can, like you said, we can make those decisions at that time based on whatever happens. And so I think staff and everyone's done a good job. They have their eye on the future of what needs for the future, and yet meeting today's needs too. So I'm very happy with them.
I appreciate that. So that concludes our budget presentation for this evening. Certainly, if you have questions that you have the tentative budget book, you'll have a copy of the budget presentation that I gave. Feel free to reach out to me either individually, or we can discuss it in notice meeting on Monday night. We will endeavor to answer questions. Would you like to take a break before we look at the agenda, or just continue on?
I'm good.
You're good. Okay. I'm fine.
So I will try and be considerate of time and just looking at this, a couple things. Perhaps they aren't as excited about Monday night's commission meeting.
If you lost them.
MJ, if you would take count of everybody that's still here and make note of everybody who left. So just a couple quick things, and we can get through this, like I said, very quickly. We're gonna have 2 presentations Monday night. I'm excited about this. The TPO is coming forward to do, I believe their resolutions on behalf of the TPO and the Disadvantaged Local Coordinating Board, the Transportation Disadvantaged Local Coordinating Board, honoring and remembering JP's service to them. So I'm not sure who exactly is coming from there. It says Jeremy Clark and Julia Davis, but I think there'll be other members as well. So I'm just excited to see that. I believe that JP's widow will be here with us that night as well. So we'll have a proclamation from Gary Hubbard on Water Professionals Month, which is for the month of August. The Shops LLC, that is ordinance 2329, that is the commercial development that is out at the corner of Country Club Road and Dundee Road. Second reading, we've discussed that one. You know, you should be, if you have, certainly if you have questions, let me know. On the consent agenda, on 10A, we are looking at that. We may end up pulling that one, but that is the HVAC award of contract for all of our chiller units throughout the city. We've got a lot of refrigerators and HVACs and water fountains and things that have refrigeration associated with them, but that is being reviewed one last time by our procurement staff. So that may end up getting pulled. There is some travel and training for Mayor Pro Tem Birdsong associated with the Central Florida Regional Planning Council. And then there is a developers agreement with the Villamar community. So Villamar, we've had them here a number of times. AJ, can you go to the next slide for me? So this is a developers agreement where they are doing some roadway improvements along Cunningham Road. And in concert with that, they have agreed to extend our alternative water source transmission line about 1,200 plus feet down that section. They will do that work for us at the cost of about just shy of $470,000. So this is, we do this an awful lot, you know, developers going in and making improvements. We've got pipe that needs to go in the ground. There's no sense in wasting anybody's money by mobilizing twice, and we can have them do that at the same time. Next item, the LHAP. So Diane Durr will be here Monday evening, and she will be able to address any questions you have with the LHAP. But this is a document that we're required to do every 3 years that explains to the state how we plan to use our SHIP dollars over the next 3-year period. Just so you know, we are expected to receive $613,000 in SHIP funds for fiscal year 23-24, and that will be used for new construction, acquisition, leverage. What you can use it for is new construction, acquisition, federal grant leveraging, home ownership council, disaster assistance. Our plan calls for us to use that for down payment assistance, for rehab of homes, for emergency repairs, and then there's also a disaster emergency repair, which is kind of interesting that Diane and I were just talking about this yesterday. Somebody has trees that are potentially, you know, damaging in anticipation of a storm coming. That's something that can be mitigated through SHIP dollars. If they qualify, obviously they have to meet the income levels, but it's nice to see that there's some flexibility in how those dollars are used to safeguard our residents. We are establishing an auditor selection committee. So our contract with CLA ended when they've completed the most recent audit, and it is time to do an RFQ for new auditing services. So we have presented a audit selection committee resolution. This is what is required by the state. Sad to say that Colleen and I cannot be a member of that committee. And I was like thinking, man, so Commissioner Mercer, we had conversation with her, and she has volunteered, if the rest of the commission is so inclined, to serve as the chair of that committee. That is allowable and required by the statute. And then the two people that we have reached out into the community that are certainly expert in auditing, Hap Hazelwood and Steve Crispin. So that is our recommendation. We have spoken with both of them, and they are delighted to be able to serve their city in this capacity. Short term, all they have to do is review the RFQs, and then we'll go on from there. The 11C and 11D, these are some amendments to our state revolving funds. One pertains to drinking water, one pertains to clean water. And these are part of the One Water Master Plan work that we were doing. The cost of that project is less than what was originally contemplated in those agreements. So these are amendments that change the schedule and the amount of repayment. This one is kind of interesting and I think deserves some discussion. And I'm gonna ask John and Charlie Bird and Chief Brandon if he's here to weigh in as need be, but as you know, we have a panhandling ordinance that was adopted in 2016. And it had some very specific parameters within it that what we have come to discover is that to be in line with, I guess really with First Amendment rights that we've got in case law, we need to make some changes to that public solicitation ordinance. So this ordinance 2349, as it outlines within your fact sheet, basically repeals the existing ordinance we have entirely. And it adopts a Polk County Board of County Commissioners ordinance relating to dangerous use of public right-of-ways as an enforceable provision of our city's code. And that is intended to address panhandling and solicitation that is taking place within roadways that creates a level of safety concern. It also it reenacts the prohibition on solicitation and panhandling, canvassing on private property. So somebody coming into a business and panhandling, that is prohibited against. But it includes within that definition that would include public property that is leased to a private entity or licensed to a private entity for its exclusive use. So this really pertains to like our sidewalk cafes when we have those downtown, so that you don't have panhandling and solicitation to folks that are there enjoying a meal and they're being, harassed in that arena as such. John, would this also, I just wanted to clarify, this would also apply to the leasing or assignment, temporary as it may be, for special events within the public realm that have an exclusive use?
Yes.
So it provides us some opportunity to be within what case law says we can do and still be effective. The other thing that it does is it includes a sit-lie prohibition on public sidewalks during the 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. period, and prohibiting obstructing the entryways and exits to buildings. We've had a number of complaints over the years of people that are basically taking up residence on a sidewalk. And I can't get down the sidewalk. I can't get into my building because there's someone sleeping in the public space in front of my entry point. So this gives us some opportunity to address that as well. I think the timing of this is very appropriate. Certainly want the city attorney to weigh in. We have had, a lot of discussion on this over the years and trying to make sure we're doing the right thing and being within what case law allows us to do is the objective. So.
Yes, and I think that as city manager noted, we tried to narrowly tailor this ordinance to meet what we understand is existing case law, which continues to evolve. And there's some cases that we're watching particularly as they relate to other municipalities or other local governments in Florida, whether that be state courts or federal courts, because we're dealing with, as you heard the city manager say, constitutional First Amendment right issues. So it was interesting. We had a presentation to you all back in October of last year, I think, with Chief Brandon and Director Bird, and we talked about this, I think, and we talked about that we would be continuing to look at this. Well, this is the continuum of that, and I think that we will continue to look at this and monitor, evolving case law as it gets announced and as it develops. But I think that in general, this is bringing us to what we understand to be compliance with case laws. There have been some public auditors that have come and have taken, which is great and free to do. And so we want to be smart about how we give the tools to our folks to work with, to make sure that they're within the lines of what we understand the law to be. The other thing is that this allows there to be a degree, as the city manager noted, of creating safer environments. in the public realms that we've had issues, both health and other issues with folks that have either camped out or decided to, take up habitation. And so this gives us an opportunity to try to address that to the best that we can. It's not a panacea and it's not a single solution. It's a multifaceted issue, but this helps give us some tools that we think may be helpful.
The last item,
I have a question.
Oh.
Just a minute.
yes,
And it says in reading it, and I can't.
Tracy, can
find-
you pull your mic down just a little bit? Thank you.
In reading it, it says, and I can't exactly find it, but it is arrestable offense, I guess. You could
Yes.
say. With continuous acts, are they going to be given, the first time they'll be warned, or are they going to be?
Yes, I will defer to Chief Brandon and or Director Byrd, but I think we're going to fold this into our magistrate process,
Mhm.
like we have for consumption on public property, alcohol consumption. And Chief is here to answer that in
Okay.
more detail.
Yes, the way that would work is the first offense, they're basically given, it's like a city ordinance notice to appear, and they go through the special magistrate. And then they will determine if they have violated the ordinance. And at that time, they can give them a fine, community service, those type of things. Second offense, the same way, they go back, of course, it increases as fines. Third offense, if they've been convicted twice through the special magistrate, third offense then becomes an arrestable offense, goes to the criminal courts and the county courts.
And Commissioner Mercer, that's on page 10 of the ordinance at the top under section
I read it, but I just couldn't find it.
15.5. Yes, ma'am.
And we have in the past contracted with Gail Cheatwood, an attorney, to provide public indigent defense at the criminal court system. I presume the public defender is still taking the position that they will not tender defense for a municipal violation, ordinance violation cases. Our state attorney is very happy to prosecute those for us at no cost, which I'm grateful for, to be honest. And so I don't know where we stand on that. I think Ms. Cheatwood maybe didn't renew, but we will have to furnish counsel once it gets to the criminal court system, and we'll be prepared to do that
Yes.
to the extent that we can.
I'm working with David Carmichael to try to get not only her back, but an additional
Good.
attorney, so we'll have at least two.
That's, my law partner, David Carmichael, focuses practice more specifically on representing law enforcement agencies. So he's been working with our folks to help in that regard.
My concern was just the first offense. Some of them may not know
Right.
that we assume that everybody reads a newspaper or looks at the, the webpage or does this or does that, but yeah, they don't. So that was my only concern.
Yes, ma'am. Ordinance 2350, this is a amendment or a modification to section 2143 of chapter 2 of our code of ordinances regarding the canvassing board. And it assigns or provides for the allowance of up to 2 alternate members in the event that we need to do so. Right now, the canvassing board does not allow for alternates. And we need to make sure that we're safeguarded in that regard, should we ever have that need. And then the last item is the trim documents. So this is to officially set the maximum allowable millage rate for fiscal year 24, which is known as the tentative millage rate. That millage rate can be reduced at a later point, but it cannot be increased. And we will also need to set the meeting dates, which I had mentioned would be the first being September 12th at 6 p.m. The rollback rate is noted within the fact sheet and on your screen is 6.0066 mils. That is certainly a significant number less than to reduce it by 5.3 mils, well, actually almost 5.9 mils entirely. But because of the, unless you're going to the rollback rate, you do have to advertise it as a tax increase, even though we're not raising the millage rate. So we've discussed that many times. I do have a presentation on the budget. I don't know if you've heard it, but I'd be happy to give it this evening. If you don't have anything to do for the next 2 hours, but I do appreciate the commission's support and the engagement over the past several weeks as we've worked through this, so. And with that, that's everything. So for Monday night, answer any questions or
I'll just note how efficient the meeting was this evening.
I was gonna say.
Same.
That's good.
In closing, I wish everybody happy National Hot Dog Day. And if you're gonna choose to have something unhealthy this evening, Oscar Mayer is your friend. Thank you.